Hello and welcome to the Bob Reeves Brass live Facebook Q&A with Jerry. Hey, it's so great to have you guys watching from around the world. Show us some love in the comments section. You have a few minutes to share with your friends to let them join in on the fun we're going to have. And ask your questions. Start asking in the questions in the comment section, because we have trumpet player, arranger, horn section writer, producer, student of William Adam from Indiana University. I mean, the credits, we could go on and on and on for an hour, but let's get right to it. Let's bring in our special guest today, Jerry Hay. Jerry, how you doing?
Great. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing awesome. Thank you so much. First things first, I hope you're safe and healthy at home. You've been taking care of these crazy times?
Yeah. Yeah, we've been staying here and, hunkered down pretty well. And, it's crazy times.
So, well, got to make the best of it. We already have folks checking in from around the world. We got UK, we got all across the US, so this is really cool. Excited to get going. And also just point of logistics, we're having connection issues for those of you watching, so if we drop the stream or something, we'll come back on. But the important part is we're going to have some great information. The first question comes from Mark Novelich. He's asking if you could talk about your time on Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Oh, Alan Silvestri was a composer, and we had been working with Alan Silvestri on a TV show called Chips, which was about California motorcycle cops, Gary and I, and Gary Grant and myself. And so Alan Silvestri started movies, and his first movie was Romancing the Stone, and then which we played on, and then he did all the Back to the Futures, which we also played on all of those. And then he was asked to do this Roger Rabbit, and was in London with the London Symphony and a 5-piece jazz combo consisting of Tom Scott on saxophone, Harvey Mason Sr. on drums, Chuck DeMonico on bass, Randy Waldman on keyboards, and myself. So we went over there as kind of the jazz nucleus inside of the London Symphony. So, I think we were there 4 or 5 days doing this. So it's a great experience. Alan, terrific writer.
What fun. That must have been a fun session.
Yeah.
Next question comes in all the way from Australia, our good buddy Adrian Veal. Hi, Adrian. I know you set your alarm to get up this morning. He has a question about the section playing. When you're playing commercial music, what's your idea of a balanced section? Is it equal volume of each player, or is there still a lead trumpet guiding the rest?
The way I write is, I sort of have... I've come with this little kind of trick that I've learned how to make the balance of the horn section sound the way I want to. So the first trumpet, when we play now, it's usually a 4-horn section now that I usually write for. 2 trumpets, trombone, sax. And we always double track. And on the double tracking if it needs to be a bigger chord or fuller chord. So add an extra trumpet part and an extra trombone part and an extra sax part, but I'll always double the first trumpet part. So as the second trumpet, you have to play up to the first trumpet because you are only recording one track of that note, as opposed to the trumpet, which will be double tracked. So the second trumpet has to be equally as loud as the first trumpet on the first track, and because the first trumpet will do the second track, and the second trumpet player will play the third trumpet note. So that for the way I write, the second trumpet part is as important as the first part. And so the trombone and saxophone parts have to be equal balance on both sides also.
Great information. And for those of you watching, we understand we're having not the best connection between Jerry and I. So I think the audio's coming through, and we're doing the best we can. But the information is there, and that's the important part. The next question comes from Ron Appel. Hey, Ron, good to see you. Jerry, back when sessions were happening more frequently, did you ever need to call a sub to cover for you?
Yeah, I probably, an occasion where we went long on a session, or one time in particular when my daughter was born, I was doing a Barry White session, and my wife called me in the middle of a Barry White session and said, I can go to the hospital, and I'm pretty sure I called Larry Hall in on that one. So yeah, there have been occasions, not a lot, but several.
Now, you've played with a lot of great musicians. Are there any that just particularly blow you away in terms of their chops and their artistry?
Most of the guys that I play with, I feel that way about. They all have, a characteristic that contributes to making the horn section sound the way it does. Gary Grant, great sound. If he's playing a high F sharp, you might as well pack up and go home. And great attitude. And Bill Reichenbach, great sound, can play anything, any instrument. Dan Hagen, same thing. Leg Williams, all of these guys. Chuck Finley, there's another brilliant talent. But they all, when we're doing it as a horn section, it's all hopefully coming together as one, kind of a team effort. So, but there's so many musicians here I respect, and it's amazing.
Yeah, and you just listen to your lick on Speed Demon. If those guys can play that, it's probably not a whole lot they can't play.
Yeah, true.
Okay, Ralph Pyle, another Australian great player. He's got a question about what exercises would you recommend for playing from the low register to the high register in the same breath and embouchure setting? Great question.
Well, Mr. Adam had us play over the whole horn as much as possible. And then Larry Hall and Charlie Davis, who were both 2 years ahead of me, they were already physically advanced and could play all over the horn. And so we tried to extend all the exercises, any exercise that we would play, any Schlossberg exercise, take them up as high as you can, and in one breath. I know Mr. Adam has these expanding scale things, it starts sort of in the middle of the trumpet and expands both ways, and you end up low sharp, scale up to high F sharp and back down, and hopefully, do that in one breath is what you're going for. And then we extended, so we extended it going from pedal C to double C to pedal C in one breath. So, making sure that you have to play with the whole range of the horn that way and in one breath.
That's great. Great advice and great question. And could you talk a little bit more about your time with Mr. Adam? The things, you were a classical player going into Indiana, right? And then your career took a different path.
Yeah, I went to Indiana playing C trumpet. I'd taken it from a guy in Chicago Symphony, Charlie Geyer, who was then playing fourth in Chicago Symphony. I think he was like 21 years old, and taught at Eastman and Northwestern, and now at Rice, and has all kinds of students everywhere now. And that was great. And he said, well, if you're going to do this, you got to play C trumpet. So I ended up playing C trumpet for exclusively for the 3 years in high school. And then I went to Indiana, and you hear Larry Hall and Charlie Davis play in the orchestra, and go sit next to them in a big band setting, and then you go into the practice room and play duets with them. And I kind of went, well, that's what I want to do. I don't want to just play orchestra stuff. I want to play. These guys can play anything. That's what I want to do. So that's sort of, it's kind of the turning point then.
And then, then you ended up in Honolulu and kind of went from there.
Yeah. Larry Hall called me. He had already gone over to Hawaii, and Larry called me, and I happened to be in a lesson with Mr. Adam, and he called Mr. Adam's office, and he said, "You want to come over?" And I said, "Well, I need to see what Mr. Adam thinks." And Mr. Adam said, "You've learned all you're going to learn here. You're going to go over there to Hawaii with Larry, and you guys will kill it." So he gave me his blessing, and I took off in about a week.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And thank you for all of us, all of you that are watching online. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from, and I hope you'll bear with us that we have not the best connection between Jerry and I, and we've tried all kinds of things, and it's bad Wi-Fi, and where Jerry's located, not good cell service. So, but the information is great, and then once everything's safe again and we can do this in person, we'll do another Q&A and do it live and do it in the same room. We'll look forward to that. But keep your questions coming in the comments. We got a lot of love showing up. The next question comes from Carlos Jimenez. Mr. Hay, would you talk about the Luis Miguel sessions and Al Jarreau?
The Luis Miguel sessions were some of the very difficult, first of all. And Luis is a great guy, great singer. The music was always really good. And they gave me kind of free rein to write whatever I wanted to write. So, always an enjoyable time with Luis. And I don't know how many records we did, but it was just great. And, he has his family unit. I'm still in contact with those guys. And you go in and they make you feel like you are, the record wouldn't be the same unless we were there. So it was really a great experience. And then the Jarreau stuff with Jay Graydon producing, we did the first record that we did with Roof Garden and stuff was Chuck Finley and Bill Reichenbach and myself. And that was at Jay's house in kind of a funky bedroom setting that we were playing, and the recording, the studio, the booth was in another room somewhere in his house, and he couldn't really see us, and it was a little difficult to record that one, but it still came off well. And then the Jarreau record and High Crime were done at the next house where he had a full-on studio in it, really a dead studio, so much so that first of all, the sessions didn't start until like 11 o'clock at night. And we would play until 6 or 7 in the morning. So that was difficult to begin with. And then the room being so dead, everybody was getting headaches. It was just so dead. You couldn't hear yourself. It's kind of hard to believe that it sounds like it does, considering the room it was in. Some of the best sounding horn stuff on those records. Jay did a great job. We played into a great mic. Gary, Grant Finley, and myself, Bill Reichenbach, Charlie Loper, and Lou McCurry played on a couple. It just, what a great time that is.
Oh, man. And that actually brings a question. I mean, something about your arranging and writing, especially over the pop stuff, it's compared to the stuff that came before, it swings. How is that something that you do in the writing or the articulation that gives it that groove prior to the funk and disco stuff before?
Coming from Seawind, we had sort of figured out this kind of phrasing thing that didn't make 16th notes feel so stiff. So we would phrase across a 16th note. So it would be, if you had 4 16th notes, we would phrase slur the middle 2 16th notes. And then, so if you had 8 16th notes, it'd be da 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 da, like that. So that it didn't go da 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 da. It went da 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 da. And so it kind of made it have a little more swing. So some of the writing was purposely written like that so that it didn't have that real stiff feeling, and tried to make it a little greasier, a little more swing factor, I guess, as you say, on the licks, even though they were still straight eighth notes. It wasn't that not everything was toned.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating. And we got people checking in around the world. Tommy Walsh is checking in from the UK. It says you have terrible Wi-Fi, but a great view of the Pacific Ocean. So
yeah, he stayed here a couple times, so he knows.
So he understands. Greg Wing is asking, what advice do you have for young students, young players coming to LA who want to make it in the studio scene?
Well, you need to be able to play like Wayne Bergeron. You kind of need to have to start there, and granted, Wayne is amazing, but you have to set your sights that high. You have to want to be as good as Wayne, if not better. So that's one. That's play. Two, you have to have the right attitude. Come here, play a Holiday Inn job for some guy, and you never know where that's going to lead. You have to know something about arranging. You have to know something about maybe songwriting. You have to know how to work Pro Tools and Logic and be able to do all the social media stuff. And, it's just not trumpet anymore, unfortunately, like it was when I came to the business. I came here and, I was a trumpet player. Thankfully, switched over into more arranging as part of that. But, you can't just do trumpet here anymore. Very, very few people can do that now. So, you need a little bit of everything.
Well, and just like yourself, I mean, how did you get into the arranging and composing side of things?
Again, back to Seawind, when we started, we were playing top 40 type stuff, Tower Power, Aretha Franklin, Edgar Winter White Trash, all these horn tunes, and we needed to have some horn parts to play behind them, and so I transcribed them off the record. And to Los Angeles to record, we were baked potato, and all of a sudden I get a phone call from Quincy. Wants you to come in and play on a record and do the arranging. It kind of started, what a great opportunity that was for me. Jeez. Kind of started there, and kind of basically because of Quincy saying, yeah, I want you to do this, forced me into, writing for horns, for the horn section stuff, and then the same thing that he did with strings. He said he wanted me to write strings for Off the Wall. He was on tour at the time. So the Shaka Khan record came around called Master Jam that he produced, and he said, you're going to write strings for this. I said, Quincy, I don't really write strings. And he said, I don't care. You're going to. So he kind of forced me into it, which was, again, another great opportunity and, on a world-class stage with Quincy and Shaka. Great opportunity.
Amazing. And we got a lot of, it's like an Indiana University reunion in the comments section. So after we wrap up here, you'll have to check it out because a lot of great names popping up and saying hi and showing love. Right. So thank you guys. We're here live with Jerry Hay, answering your questions. Ask them down in the comments. We have a lot coming in, and we'll try to get to as many of these as possible. And if you're just joining us, we're aware the connection isn't the best, but you can hear Jerry clearly, and a lot of great information. So thank you guys for your patience and bearing with us. But a lot of fun, and especially people stuck at home during this quarantine. This kind of sharing of information is really cool. It brings us together. So the next question, let's go from Nando over in the Netherlands. Mr. Hay, do you think the sound of the section you worked with has changed over the years, especially due to equipment and recording from then and now?
I don't think so. I think it's, you go back to the Off the Wall record with Bruce and engineering, and if everything could sound like that, which is what I strive for, that, I mean, we can still get that same sound today. And now today, I try to have my son Andrew, who's an engineer, record all the horn stuff. He's great on Pro Tools, got unbelievable ears. He's heard everything that I've ever done, and he knows what it's supposed to sound like, and knows, all about Bruce, and has been in many sessions. And I think we can sound as good now as we sounded then, even using Pro Tools and all of that other stuff. I think it's still, it's still the same.
And yeah, great information. The next question is kind of related in terms of your setup. When you use four horns, what is your mic setup? How do you mic them?
Always with trumpets. If you have three guys, like the Giroux session, if you have three guys that play at an equal level, equal intensity, equal volume, equal sound quality, we used one mic. The mic on the Giroux stuff was Neumann U47, and it is probably 3 or 4 feet away, so that it's not really close into the bell, and everybody, stands sort of, the trumpet stands sort of in a little semicircle aiming toward the microphone. Now today on the four horn situation, I bought some mics. I bought over the years, playing into every kind of mic that I've ever, all of these different studios and different situations that I've had. I found a mic that seemed to be what I'm looking for, which is a Neumann KM54. It's a little bit of help on the brightness, so that it helps trumpets cut through a little bit more, but still got a nice full-bodied sound. I also love the Royer microphones. They're a little warm, little fuller-bodied, not quite as bright as the Neumann, but between those two microphones, and again, one microphone. The fewer the microphones, the better. Less engineer involvement in getting the right balance. We used to go in sessions, and there would be 4 trumpets, 4 microphones, and if I'm playing fourth trumpet, it's kind of not playing up to the level of everybody else. The engineer turns his mic up. All of a sudden, there's too much fourth trumpet, so just having one microphone takes the engineer out of the picture, making sure that if you have 3 trumpets, you balance well.
And that covers another question about your favorite mic. So that's kill 2 birds with 1 stone there. We are live with Jerry Hay, answering your questions. This is so cool. And a lot of Seawind fans checking in the comments. Could you talk a little bit about how Seawind formed?
Yeah, and Larry Hall had already gone to Hawaii, called me up, and there was a show over there that they needed some players for. So Larry was over there, and Larry was called by another saxophone player from Indiana. David Llewell was his name, and really great player. And he, after he left Hawaii, Los Angeles, with Cold Blood for a while. Then he came down here and took over for Dot. He played on some of the early Donna Summer records that we did. Great player. Anyhow, he was the first one from Indiana to go over. Larry Hall went over. Then Kim Hutchcroft, the saxophone player in Seawind on Michael Jackson records and all that, he went over next. Larry called me up. Yeah, I went over. And then David Llewell left that show that we were playing, and I called Larry Williams. So there's kind of a contingent of Indiana guys over there. And then we met Bob Wilson, the drummer of Seawind, who was in the Navy there. And Ken Wilde, the bass player in Seawind, was there because his father was in the service. So when the show ended, we didn't have any work, so we just were getting together to play freebies around Honolulu in parks and different places, and so we formed a kind of a small group, and Gary Grant was part of that, as was Larry Hall, and that was the beginning of Seawind. It was called Ox when we were in Hawaii, and then we heard Pauline Wilson, the singer of Seawind. She was on singing on another island, and kind of said, "Okay, we got to form a group," and so we did, and then we were there for kind of 3 years. We did a little tour of the Northeast, and we were in Alaska for a while, Northwest, sorry, Seattle and Portland, and then we were in Alaska for a while, Phoenix, Arizona for a while, and then back to Hawaii for kind of 3 years before we came to Los Angeles to record.
Amazing. But those must have been fun times in Hawaii.
You wake up in the morning, go to the beach, go to rehearsal in the afternoon, go home, get dressed, go play at night. We played in this one club called the Oyster Bell in Honolulu. I think it was 9 to 4 we played, So you kind of get to see the sunrise some days, if you have to pack up all the equipment and stuff. But it was great. It was such a great experience. And, we had Cary Grant had a couple big rehearsal big bands that we had, and the music scene was really good over there then.
A couple trumpet-related questions. First of all, did you ever, because you were so busy and writing and arranging and playing and sessions and whatnot, did you ever have a time when you burned out or ran into chop issues because of how much you were working?
I don't think I ever ran into chop problems. I had a throat problem. In the mid '80s, there was I had some kind of tumor in my throat that it was a little kind of an irritation, when you go to play and your throat would hurt, which that doesn't hurt. It wasn't a chop issue, but it was from that tumor thing. But I always tried to make sure that I got up every morning and warmed up and was prepared for whatever I went in for that day. Even if I had a hard night to, played in some stupid big band the night before, get up the next morning, warm up carefully, make sure you're ready to go, so that, you didn't get in that rut of hurting yourself more.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, you told a story on when we did the podcast interview about you had a late night big band gig or something, and then I think it was Chips or something the next morning, and you had like a 3-hour turnaround to sleep and to get to the studio, and
right.
It was like the one time you didn't. So that little plug for the podcast, The Other Side of the Bell. So if you want to hear that story, check out our podcast. I think it's episode 22 you're on, and then you're also on episode 15 with the William Adam tribute episode, which has some great stuff. So, but that was, I think, your point on that was you, no matter what you had, you did your routine in the morning if it meant getting up at 5 a.m. or something, right?
After that one time, that was my lesson that, I can't do that again because it was horrible.
So the next question comes from Matt Cochran, who's asking, who are your main influences for your trumpet sound?
Sound. That's a good one. I guess Clifford Brown was kind of my first big influence on trumpet. My dad had heard him play live in Chicago and bought his first 10-inch record and brought it home. So that was kind of, from the record part. But then the band director of my hometown had a son who was 4 years older than I am, I think, maybe even 5 years, who was one of the rare people to get to take lessons with Herseth. So, and my mother was a pianist, accompanied everybody on their solos for the contest and stuff. So this guy would come over, and he had a group, so I heard him play, and he was taking lessons from Herseth. So that was kind of a big influence. And then when I went in to start taking from Charlie Geyer, his sound was just like pure velvet. I am not kidding you. It was mind-blowing to hear him play. First thing on a Saturday morning, he hadn't played a note. He comes in and plays an excerpt or something, and it just sounds magnificent. So that was a big influence. Then, of course, Mr. Adam, adolescent, crazy, Larry Hall and Charlie Davis. I mean, that's basically it. Those people.
Just kind of surrounded by sound, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, that must be amazing, walking down the halls in Indiana. I mean,
it was great. So the doors were solid, and you couldn't see who was behind the door. But we spent so much time there. You could walk down the hall of, I don't know, there's probably 10 doors on each side. And you could go, okay, that's Larry Hall. You could walk down, and that's Charlie Davis. And then you could walk down, and, you could practically tell who everybody was just by their sound. It was amazing.
Amazing. What fun. If only they had smartphones back then to capture that time.
Yeah,
Man.
No kidding.
So let's see, the next question. Could you talk, you work with Gary Grant and Chuck Findlay all the time. Could you talk about the strengths of what you guys would do in terms of trading off when you're in a session?
It's kind of whoever. Since I was writing, I could say, okay, Chuck, why don't you play this one? This is kind of, maybe this would be better for you. Or Gary, you play this one. Or I'll play this one. So I'd play the first one, and Chuck would play the second one, and Gary would play the third one. Or Gary would play the first one, and Chuck would play the second, and I'd play the third. I would try to make sure that the right person played the right chart. There's a tune on the Giro record called Trouble in Paradise that doesn't have a lot of trumpet on it, but it has trumpet like on the fade that Chuck played, and purposely I said, Chuck, you got to play this one. And it's that borderline between swing and straight that if it's one way or the other, it's not going to feel right. And Chuck's feel is just incredible. So just, something like that. Then in another case, the Airplay record. I played the Nothing You Can Do About It. Gary played one called Bix, All the High of Sharps. That's Gary. And that was with Steve Medale. So, it was, I'll play one, Gary play one, Chuck play one. We alternated.
Great. And after half an hour, you've got coming nice and clear. This is awesome. Onward and upward. So great advice and great information. So many sessions you've done. Ron Appel is asking if you recall the Old Fool Back on Earth album. Does that ring a bell?
No.
Well, it was you and Chuck and Gary. Remember that one? And Bob Finley. Could you imagine? How many albums have you guys done? Got to be thousands by now?
Somebody mentioned that they had tried to count them up, and they got to 1,700.
Mm-hmm.
So
amazing.
Yeah.
Now, something from a few years back at the William Adam Trumpet Festival when it was out here at APU, probably the coolest thing in the world when you did a kind of like a mock recording session where you brought in your charts, and then the attendees at the Trumpet Festival got to split into sections. Some of you guys are watching right now. Howdy, Simon and whatnot. And then you talked about kind of what your sessions would look like. So when you got the music and then how you would rehearse and things like that. Could you kind of take us through that? What a typical session looks like in terms of the musician showing up, how you rehearse, how you take takes and things like that?
For the most 5% of the time, nobody knows what they're going to have to play on my sessions. You know, they all walk in not having seen anything. On that rare occasion when I have written something that's awkward to play, I will maybe send Gary just like the one lick, like the Speed Demon lick. I sent that to Gary just so we don't have to struggle over that lick when we get into the studio over and over and over, because, you know, complicated and too fast, and, you know, so stuff like that. So I would send to Gary, but that didn't happen very often. So everybody walks in cold. As Bill Reichenbach says, he doesn't ever want to see anything before we get there. You know, you might make him nervous. And same with Chuck Finley. So we go in there, and especially now with my son, who has my microphones, knows my setup, knows how I like to record, has it all set up in the studio when we get there. I mean, there's literally no sound check. So, you know, it's not like, okay, let me hear the first trumpet, you know, and then you spend 10 minutes and the guy's worn out after 10 minutes trying to get a sound. So that takes that out of the equation. He knows what, my son Andrew knows what the balance is supposed to be, how I like everything panned, how I like everything split, and all of that stuff, knows what microphones. So that's out of the equation now. So these guys have played everything that I've ever written. So there may be something that is a little tricky, or the phrasing is a little awkward, or, you know, something that I want to make sure everybody understands how I want it to be phrased. I'll rehearse that part. You know, everybody can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, da, da, da. You know, we don't need to rehearse that. That's just, you know, or fall off on the downbeat. We don't need to rehearse that. You know, we've done 80 million fall offs on the downbeat. You know, all of the simple kind of stuff, I don't rehearse that. I just rehearse a couple little hard licks, you know, and, you know, maybe somebody have a question or something. And then now we just start recording. And, you know, with Andrew's great ears and incredible Pro Tool skills, you know, we play something 2 or 3 times and he's got it like perfected in there, and we don't have to keep beating ourselves up anymore. You know, too bad he wasn't around 40 years ago.
Right. A lot of people are asking about the working day and night session. Can you talk about that and how it came about?
Well, it started out as, you know, you're looking at the song and okay, working day and night, and, you know, it seemed to me like if we were going to have a horn break, which it wasn't necessarily anything, it was just a rhythm section groove for that when the horns are happening now, so I thought, well, working day and night, maybe it could be a little frenetic, you know, with working and, you know, never getting any sleep, and, you know, just kind of intense part. So okay, so that seems like the right sort of start. And then at the beginning of that song, Michael does a little like mouth percussion that goes, he does that mouth percussion. So I kind of listen to that and I go, that became one of the 2 horn parts in that section. So then I wrote that out, and then I figured out where the 16th notes are not happening in that piece, and tried to fill in those 16th notes on the other side, on the other part, which is E minor chords to A7 chords. So you put them together, and it's like like non-stop 16th notes. And with Bruce Swedian's recording, we double tracked the first part and double tracked the second part of chords. And he keeps everything in stereo. So instead of having one side where it's this part and it's going and this part that goes and so you can hear them like that, he has them on top of each other. So it's all stereo the whole way. So you can't. So that's why it sounds like crazy like that. So that's how it came about.
Amazing. And so you mentioned bring up Bruce. I mean, did he help you, mentor you in terms of working in the studio and microphones, or was it someone else?
I wasn't when we first started out. I didn't really know anything about microphones. I just knew that every time we went in with Bruce, it was like, Bruce, what is going on? Because this just sounds so amazing every time. Well, he had bought all of these microphones new back in the 50s, and no one had ever touched those microphones but Bruce. So all of his microphones were like super pristine, in top quality condition. So that was a start of like my microphone, like what is going on? Why does this sound so good? I played into this mic on other situations. It doesn't sound like this. So I asked Bruce, what's going on, Bruce? And he always said, oh, I'm not doing anything. It's just you guys. So, okay, well, maybe the mic has something to do with it. So working with Alan Sides at Ocean Way Studios, he had a huge microphone collection. He had gone to East Germany when the Berlin Wall fell down and bought all of the Neumann microphones he could find. So he in fact had Hitler's microphone that he bought, that he talked into on those big ceremonies. He had Hitler's microphone. Jeez. Crazy. So he put up a microphone. He put up the KM54 one time, and it was a hard trumpet part and a soft flugel part. And I went in to listen to the playback, and I went, "Whoa, what is that?" Because you don't always get both on that on a microphone like that. And he said, "Well, KM54 is his choice for trumpet mic." So that was when I found out that, okay, I get it now. I played into a lot of mics, and there are a lot of really good mics, but a lot of it has to do with the condition they're in, and second engineers dropping them, and people don't really care about studio microphones, and
Oh, it's like buying a used trumpet or a used mouthpiece.
Or a used car.
The more hands it's been in, the more likely something's been screwed up, right?
Right.
So actually, that leads to our next question about equipment. What were you using, during your sessions, and would you switch it up depending on what you were playing?
I came to LA playing Bach trumpet, Bach 3C mouthpiece, and played on that for, 3 or 4 years, I guess. And then maybe not even that long before I got Bob Reeves to make me a mouthpiece. It was a copy of a New York City Bach 3 rim that Charlie Davis had, that Bob copy. And then he put a little shallower cup than a regular Bach mouthpiece. Because I didn't want to, I can't play a real shallow mouthpiece. So I played that for quite a while, that mouthpiece. Then Gary and I both switched from Bach to Colicchio for a while. And then after, a while on Colicchio, we switched back to Bach. And I switched back to Bach mouthpiece. It just felt like I had a little more room in the Bach mouthpiece.
It was that 37?
37.
And which Colicchio were you using?
1S2. It's a copy of Chuck Finley's style of trumpet.
Yeah.
I actually had, I don't know if you know of Paul Hubenon,
mm-hmm.
Trumpet player in LA in the 70s, an amazing player. I had his horn for a while, that he had Dominic Colicchio make a copy of Chuck's horn. Uh, and I played that for a while, and I had I don't know, about 10 Calikios for a while, but have sold all but a couple.
But you wouldn't switch up horns depending on the gig. I mean, you had
Would
your instrument.
wouldn't switch mouthpieces or anything. Just put a mouthpiece in and play. I'm one of those guys that thinks that the mouthpiece doesn't really make that much difference, because you can, Chuck Finley can play a rubber hose and it'll sound like Chuck Finley.
And we've seen him. Yep, we've seen him.
Yeah.
I remember Charlie Davis's birthday. He, we handed him a plastic trumpet and I had some crazy mouthpiece we made, and he played up to a double C, no problem. This is so great. We're here live with Jerry Hay. We have just time for a few more questions, but show us some love in the comments. Let us know where you're viewing from. We have a couple questions. I know a lot of folks are watching that are either Adam students or second generation students, but there's a lot of people that aren't. So could you talk about what your warm-up was and what your daily practice routine was?
The warm-up was sort of a routine that he had when Larry Hall, Charlie Davis, and I were in school, and it would start off with Clark chromatic, that, expanding, starting on F sharp and expanding F natural, G, E, G sharp, and keep expanding that way. Then these expanding scales, Schlossberg, a lot of Schlossberg we ended up doing. And depending on how much time you have, I mean, back at school, we were doing 8 to 10 hours every day. So, you'd hit Arbans and Charlier and St. Jacomb's and a little bit of everything. But eventually when I got busy here, especially, and I have a lot of time to play through everything all the time. So I got about an hour and 15 or 20-minute routine playing all over the horn, still of the same routine, basically, Schlossberg, and then ending with a long chromatic Maggio, when you start on low F sharp and go up chromatically an octave and then back down, and then you're on first space F sharp and go down and come back up, and then G and up and down, and then D, slowly, as high as you can go without taking it off. So that by that point, I've done a whole bunch of tonguing, played all over the horn, played a high, played a serious endurance exercise, and then I'm ready for anything at that point. And that was kind of my routine for, 40 years, kind of.
Yeah, and I remember when we did the podcast, you and Larry Hall and I sat with Larry for probably 4 hours going through your routine and writing notes, and then you were reviewing and stuff. So I can toss that back up on the website for those who are interested, because that was a great resource. And a lot of players were interested to see what you guys were doing and the breaks you were taking and how you would fit in etudes and other things outside of the Schlossberg, Clark,
right,
and the typical things we would think of the Adam routine. So.
Right.
Couple more questions and then we'll wrap up here. A couple people are asking about if you have any advice, any modern mic that sounds as good or similar to the KM54.
I don't really know. I know my son has mentioned a couple microphones, and I can't remember what he said. I don't know. Because I have 3 KM54s, so I just always use those and don't have to worry about it.
Don't mess with other stuff, yeah.
Yeah, I know they're expensive, but, sorry.
Well, maybe you and your son can develop one, a budget model, and then that'll be another...
Yeah, I know Royer has some a little more inexpensive microphones, but, it's that the tube version of Neumann with a really thin nickel diaphragm, it's hard to compete with that sound.
Yeah, that's I mean, if you want the best sound, you got to use the best equipment, right? I mean, that's Let's see. Let's do two more, and then we'll call it because we're getting close to an hour here. Thank you guys, everyone who's showing us love in the comments. And for those of you that are just joining us and you missed the first 50 minutes or so, this will be posted on Facebook, so you can hear the questions that you didn't get. And sorry about the stream earlier. It's great that it's cleared up, and thank for everyone for bearing with us. So this is about your arranging. This comes from Dennis. Jerry, when you're arranging pop charts, do you score the trumpets mostly unison, or do you split up the parts? And how do you double in a recording session?
So with four horns now, of course, depending on what you're writing, if I'm writing. If I'm writing, say it's just a high C fall off, bow, downbeat fall off. So I will put the first track, I'll have two trumpets up on high C, tenor sax on his high C, trombone on middle B flat concert. Then on the double track, I'll have the first trumpet on high C, the second trumpet down an octave, trombone up on his high B flat, and tenor down on his middle C, so that the trombone and tenor cross voicings. And I use kind of that same thing if it's a chord. I'll have, say it's a C7 chord. Okay, if C is on top, second trumpet will be G. The second trumpet on the double track will be E, still with the first trumpet doubling the high C. And then I'll have the seventh usually and third in the trombone on different tracks, seventh and third. And the saxophone may be the fifth and, the ninth maybe, depending on how jazzy the chord is. But, so I'll end up with this side with a C chord and this side with a different C chord, always the top note voiced. That's how I do it now. It's a little confusing, and it's took me 20 years to really figure it out. But it can make four guys sound pretty big.
Amazing right here. This is so cool. If you had a choice of what to do in quarantine, and listen to Jerry Hay talk about how he's arranging and those stories. I mean, this is really incredible. Any projects that you're working on now that you can share with us?
Well, it hasn't been much lately. I did something for Wayne a while ago that we're still trying to finish up. It's got 1 million trumpets on it, and then my son is involved in doing a lot of movies now, so they're doing the Aretha movie. I think we'll be involved in doing kind of a lot on that with Jennifer Hudson. And he's doing some other TV shows and stuff that we have been involved in. The Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist. We did a bunch of stuff for that. Let's see, what else? I don't know. Now it's with these crazy times. It's everything's come to a halt, kind of.
Yeah, but you're still writing and orchestrating things like that, even though we're shut down.
Yeah. Did the guy who I worked with on 50 movies, Aaron Zigman. I helped him write a tango piano concerto that has been played in China and Paris 3 nights and San Francisco, and it's going to be played at Cleveland sometime whenever all this gets over with. And so that was a lot of work doing that. Full on, 40-minute concerto. Yeah, it's a big deal.
What fun. Well, this has been such a pleasure, Jerry. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
What an honor. We'll have to do this when everything's safe again. I hope we can do this live at some point, and maybe sip some wine while we're interviewing.
You don't have to twist my arm too hard,
And just on a personal note, I got to tell you, I mean, as I got older and got into pop music and Earth, Wind, and Fire and stuff, I loved horn section in your writing. But then I realized, growing up, I listened to DuckTales and watched DuckTales cartoon. and that's your horns. That's you on there.
Yeah.
And I started playing that for my kids and realized that's why I got that horn section from a young age before I even knew who Michael Jackson was or any of that stuff. And that stuff is killer on the cartoons. So,
yeah.
I mean, you've had me since I was a little kid loving your writing and your playing. So, it's truly an honor.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Hope you stay safe.
Thanks, you too.
Thanks, Jerry. And thank you all for watching this. I mean, what fun, really. Like, could you ask for a better Thursday afternoon here? Thank you so much for watching wherever you are in the world. And thank you for showing Jerry and all of us the love in the comments. Can't tell you how much it means to us. And just for some scheduling things, tomorrow we have trombonist David Rayano, who's the principal trombone of the Los Angeles Philharmonic and a fabulous artist. His solo CD, Everything But Trombone, is out. And you're not going to want to miss that. Great concepts for brass playing and trombone playing. So I hope you'll join us tomorrow for our 4th Q&A this week. I'll have to be honest, I overbooked myself because I thought the shop was still going to be closed. But we reopened on Monday, and so I've been running the shop and doing all of these Q&As that we thought I was going to be doing from home with plenty of time to kill. So it's been so much fun, though, and so great to see so many friends from around the world. We will keep these up, even though the shop is open and we're making our stuff. We have some great guests lined up. I can't tell you the dates yet, but we do have some great confirmed guests. So make sure you follow the shop on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, all the places so you don't miss out, because we have some guests coming up, of course, that you're not going to want to miss, both for trumpet and trombone. Okay, until then, I hope you stay safe, stay healthy, go out and practice some, get some fresh air. And until next time, I'm John Snell. Bye-bye.